You just said it is a little excursion, and you said it is a war. So which one is it?
Well, it's both. It's both. It's an excursion that will keep us out of a war, and the war is going to be. For them, it's a war. For us, it's turned out to be easier than we thought.
Can you declare victory in this war if the supreme leader remains the Ayatollah's son?
I don't want to comment on that. I don't want to comment.
Absolute clown show. Complete embarrassment. That was the president of the United States, Donald Trump. And honestly, it is becoming increasingly obvious that the White House's objectives in Iran differ quite a bit from Israel's objectives in Iran, which is why it was so incredibly stupid for Donald Trump to get dragged into a war with Iran, knowing full well that he didn't really have a plan in place for not only the military action against Iran, but more importantly, all the different consequences that come along with entering a conflict, going through with a full-blown war against a sovereign country. So we'll talk a little bit about the economic repercussions a little later in the show, but for the purposes of this discussion, we're gonna focus on the different objectives here and how it's causing a problem for the United States. Now, I'm an American who was born and raised in the United States. I live in the United States. I love the United States. That's all I care about. Okay, I don't care about Israel's goals or their objectives or their well-being. Israel is purportedly an ally of the United States, but has only gotten us into endless wars, endless trouble. So we should focus on what's good for America. Now, with that in mind, recently, the Wall Street Journal published a piece talking about the differences of objectives here. It's titled, "Trump says the Iran war is nearly won, but Israel has other ideas." Now, if I were the president of the United States, I'd say, I don't care about Israel's ideas. I care about what I want to do on behalf of my people for my country. But Trump doesn't fall in the category of a leader who cares about, his own people. So while regime change is absolutely Israel's goal here, or at least toppling the regime and turning Iran into a failed state, the US claims that it just, it simply wants to weaken Iran's military capability. That's all that Trump wants here. Now, let's just pretend like Trump didn't say recently that he wants to pick the next leader of Iran, signaling that he's also in favor of regime change. But here's the thing, regime change isn't an easy thing to do. And Iran's been preparing for this war for decades. Iran's not dumb, okay? It's a country full of highly educated people, regardless of what you think of their regime or their government. Fact of the matter is, these are smart people and they are prepared. And this war has proven to be a lot more difficult than I think Trump suspected or predicted. So as a result, it's kind of clear that Trump is kind of looking for some exit routes, okay? Like trying to find a way to get out of this. And so he's kind of backing off of his messaging about the regime and focusing more on victory. There's already been victory, essentially paving the way for a possible US exit. However, Netanyahu don't like that. The Israelis, of course, are happy to see the US spill its blood and use its treasure to fight its war. And as long as Israel insists on remaining in this conflict, the US has a choice. But our government always acts as though it does not have a choice and will remain in this conflict, which again, you're not gonna get regime change unless you have boots on the ground. Is Trump willing to send boots on the ground? He says he's keeping his options open, but he also knows that that would be absolutely devastating for his administration. The American people do not want it, okay? Upward of 70% of Americans are against sending ground troops to Iran. And so again, to me, it looks like he's looking for an exit route. Now, US officials are reportedly telling the Israelis to stop striking Iran's energy facilities unless Donald Trump gives them the green light, says, go ahead and strike Iran's energy facilities, which will then lead to Iran retaliating by striking energy facilities throughout the Gulf, which is creating a terrible situation, as we all know. The Wall Street Journal also suggests that the Israelis are the ones who are carrying out the assassination missions when it comes to various figures associated with the Iranian regime. And it turns out that, yeah, I mean, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth seemed to concede that point, seemed to confirm that reporting. So here's how that went down.
What's your message to Americans, those who supported the president and those who aren't really in favor of this war and who worry that Israel might be taking advantage of the U.S.'s backing?
Israel's been a really strong partner in this effort. Where they have different objectives, they've pursued them. Ultimately, we've stayed focused on ours. But what Iran has felt is the power of the world's two most powerful air forces. In that particular case, those weren't our strikes or that objective, or that wasn't necessarily our objective. But the president has made it clear to those concerns that we're not getting pulled in any direction. We're leading. The president is leading.
The president is not leading. In fact, the same Wall Street Journal report notes that Trump and Netanyahu speak every single day, at least once a day. Netanyahu is also in close contact with Jared Kushner and Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State. US officials are also reportedly telling the Israelis, maybe cut it out with targeting certain infrastructure that's going to hurt the global economy. But it remains to be seen whether the Israelis can be reined in. I mean, it would require the United States to actually issue some consequences when Israel doesn't follow through and ends up carrying out military actions that make this situation far worse. And the real question here, guys, is, okay, let's forget about what Iran is saying for a second, and that is a very relevant part. We're gonna come back to that.
What's the latest trend in hiring? Skills-based hiring, which actually emphasizes capabilities over education and direct experience. According to experts, this leads to faster hiring and better job performance. Well, if you're an employer who's adopted skills-based hiring, the best way to ensure that your applicants have the right skills is ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter recommends smart screening questions to help you hone in on that perfect match for your role. And right now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. ZipRecruiter has powerful matching technology to help discover qualified candidates quickly. They also make it easy for you to add their screening questions to your job posts so you get the highest quality applicants. That's what makes ZipRecruiter the #1 rated hiring site based on G2. Let ZipRecruiter help you find amazing candidates with the skills you seek. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
But let's just say it really is, we have magical thinking and it really is up to Israel and the United States to end the war. Let's say Trump decides, I'm gonna pull out. I'm gonna claim victory. We've decapitated the regime by killing Ali Khamenei. And so now we've won, we're gonna pull out, and then what? You're just going to leave Israel on its own? I mean, I would do that. I would have no problem with that. But our government would never do that because they're all bought by Israel. So they will remain in the war as long as Israel continues fighting Iran. But here's the other monkey wrench in this situation. Iran doesn't want to stop. Iran is not interested in diplomatic discussions. Iran is not interested in a ceasefire. Iran wants to spank the United States and Israel. Why? Well, because they don't want to agree to a ceasefire. And then 6 months from now, after the US has replenished some of its military capabilities, some of its interceptor missiles and things like that, they're gonna go back in and go to war with Iran yet again. So Iran, and they've said this on multiple occasions, sees this war as a real crisis of survival. The US doesn't see it that way. Israel doesn't see it that way. Israel would like to do away with the regime in Iran so they no longer have a challenge to their expansionist policy. And by the way, if you doubt that they have an expansionist policy where they want to annex more land, why is Israel in Lebanon right now? Why is Israel in Lebanon right now when the IDF admitted that at this point, Hezbollah has essentially been weakened? They are not north of the Litani River, which is what Israel wanted. So they're annexing land in Lebanon. They've annexed land in Syria after Bashar al-Assad was toppled. I mean, it's just so obvious. But anyway, getting back to some of the reporting on this, it is bad enough that Trump is a foreign country's lapdog. Let's keep it real. But it also doesn't help that he's delusional. Trump has told aides he wants to end the war on his terms, and after brokering a ceasefire in last year's 12-day war, believes he can put a stop to the fighting when he wants. Now, I say he's delusional because I don't think the Iranians are bluffing. They want to continue fighting. And this could have all been prevented if the Trump administration didn't, on not just one, but two occasions, use the negotiations falsely in order to sucker punch Iran. Again, they did it last summer. The US did it again recently in this ongoing war against Iran. And per an anonymous source with knowledge of the Israeli operations, Israel is well aware that Trump could end the war at any moment and is fighting as if every day is the last, said a person briefed on the operation. Israel wants more time, but is aware of the pressures Trump is facing at home to end the war, the person said. Now, why is he facing that pressure at home to end the war? Well, Republican lawmakers anonymously spoke to the press and said, yeah, we're worried about what this is doing to us politically. Plus, it's hurting the economy. Not a good look. Not a good look for us. And then when you look at public opinion polling, the majority of Americans do not favor this war, are not in favor of this war against Iran. So it's unpopular and it's hurting the Trump administration's poll numbers. It's hurting the popularity of Republican lawmakers in Congress because, God forbid, they ever come out and just say, I object to this war. They have to remain silent, and that silence, it looks like they support what's going on. And Americans don't. So it's not a good look politically speaking. And it is, again, worth noting, it doesn't even matter what Trump wants right now because it doesn't look like Israel wants to stop fighting. It would have been far better if we didn't get dragged into this war in the first place. In the past few days, Trump has gone from claiming that the war is almost finished to stating that there's much left to do. Sometimes all within the same speech, which is great. You know, it's awesome to hear conflicting, contradictory messaging from the president of the United States in the middle of a war that is spreading, expanding. Yesterday, Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat, gave a disturbing look into what the Trump administration might be planning. He writes on X, I was in a 2-hour briefing today on the Iran war. All the briefings are closed because Trump can't defend this war in public. I obviously can't disclose classified info, but you deserve to know how incoherent and incomplete these war plans are. I mean, Chris, trust me, we know, we can tell. He continues though. Maybe the lead is that the war goals do not involve destroying Iran's nuclear weapons program. This is surprising since Trump says over and over this is a key goal. And then, of course, we already know airstrikes can't wipe out their nuclear material. And so we're going to just briefly interrupt Chris Murphy's incredible thread on X to kind of check in with Senator Lindsey Graham, who's been cheerleading every single conflict and war imaginable, especially the one in Iran.
When this is over, we're going to obliterate their nuclear program and there's going to be a new dawn in the Mideast. President Trump, you did the right thing. God bless you. And Steve and Jared, you literally saved the world from terrorism.
These people are embarrassing. They should be nowhere near DC. Okay, they couldn't lead themselves out of a wet paper bag. The idea that these are leaders of our country is laughable to say the least. They're leading us to our destruction. Anyway, back to Murphy. He writes, second, they confirmed regime change is also not on the list. Well, at least not for the United States. It certainly is for Israel. So they are going to spend hundreds of billions of your taxpayer dollars, get a whole bunch of Americans killed. 7 are dead already, likely more that we don't know about. And a hardline regime, probably a more anti-American hardline regime, will still be in charge. Actually, he's definitely right about that last part because what people don't realize is regardless of what you think about the IRCG, Ali Khamenei was pretty moderate compared to the hardliners within the regime. Now, his son, by the way, just greenlit the use of a new missile that causes more damage, something that his father, okay, would be hesitant to do. He had put out a fatwa against building nuclear weapons. You think his son is going to feel that way after almost every single member of his family, including his wife, his father, and his little girl were slaughtered by the Israelis? You really think so? You think he's going to hold back? Man, this is just beyond clownish. More from Murphy. He says, okay, so what are the goals? It seems primarily destroying lots of missiles and boats and drone factories. But the question that stumped them, what happens when you stop bombing and they restart production? They hinted at more bombing, which is, of course, endless war. Something that the United States seems to really excel at, regardless of which party is in charge. And on the Strait of Hormuz, they had no plan. That much is obvious if you ask me. I can't go into more detail about how Iran gums up the strait, but suffice it to say, right now they don't know how to get it safely back open, which is unforgivable because this part of the disaster was 100% foreseeable. It was. In fact, we talked about it on this show quite a bit. There was no plan in place when it came to the Strait of Hormuz before Trump decided to strike Iran and drag the United States into this war. So are we, as the American people, in favor of endless war? Well, let's hear from the President of the United States.
What more do you need to do militarily for this operation to end?
More of the same, and we'll see how that all comes out. Right now, they've lost their Navy, they've lost their Air Force. They have no anti-aircraft apparatus at all. They have no radar. Their leaders are gone. And we could do a lot worse to one another. We're leaving certain things that if we take them out, or we could take them out by this afternoon, in fact, within an hour, they literally would never be able to build that country back.
Pull the troops out of that region, get out of this war immediately, and please, the future of the country depends on decoupling from Israel. Please decouple from Israel. Not another dollar, not another war, not another soldier. Let Israel fight its own battles. The American people are not responsible for helping Israel build its empire and steal land. What's up, everyone? I now have a live read, so let's get right to it. Let's talk about ZipRecruiter. We talk about revolutions here all the time, but what about the revolution taking place in the hiring process? Right now, everyone's talking about skills-based hiring. And if you're an employer who's adopted skills-based hiring, the best way to ensure that your applicants have the right skills is ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter recommends smart screening questions to help you hone in on that perfect match for your role. Their matching technology finds people fast, and you can see who's actively searching. It's for top-rated. It is the top-rated site actually for a reason. So if you're interested in learning more, you could actually try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TYT.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.